my channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights. And I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to see more content from me, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell, and to see when I will post a new video. And also, please comment in the comment section with any comments that you would like to share, any topics you would like to see in the future. And also, if you're interested in a personal consultation from me, I do consultations on a wide variety of topics with respect to astrology, and I also do tarot readings now. You can email me at the email that I will leave in the video description. Thank you. And also, I have started a tarot channel more recently, so you can go ahead and check it out if you're interested in tarot. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, maybe consider subscribing, would also greatly appreciate. I'm going to link my new channel in the video description as well, or in the pinned comment. Okay, so today's video is going to be a topic, like I said, that it's not something that, again, I have really prepared a script for or anything like that. It is an observation. It is based on an observation that I have made, well, over, I would say, the past months mainly. And I have looked at some charts. I will admit I haven't done like extensive research like on hundreds of charts, but I feel like I have seen enough to already spot a pattern with respect to this aspect. And this topic, I would say, is basically hand in hand with a video that I had up a while ago where I talked about celibacy and asexuality in a person's horoscope. So it has to do mainly with situations where the person doesn't want to have relationships, or the person doesn't care that much about relationships. So it's a certain configuration in the natal chart, and I would say to some extent also in the D9 divisional chart or the Navamsa chart, that tends to show people who have a hard time basically balancing their personality and their natural desires with having a partnership. It could be partnership in general, but especially about, well, romantic partnerships. And namely, I'm talking about context between the 3rd house and the 7th house. So before I get into it, I want to stress the differences between basically Vedic astrology and tropical astrology with respect to the significations of the 2nd and the 7th house, mainly the 3rd house and the 7th house, mainly the 3rd house. There is an important difference in the way that the 3rd house is treated in Vedic astrology versus the way that it was treated in tropical astrology. At least as far as I remember. To be honest, I haven't dug much into tropical astrology in the past 5 years at least, since I have been focusing mainly on the Vedic perspective. But I do remember this when I started getting into Vedic astrology, that one of the things that surprised me about the Vedic perspective is the fact that the 3rd house is connected to the concept of a person's willpower and drive. And their ability, basically, like, the 3rd house is your staying power, you know, your literally willpower. There's no better way to describe it. So it's like, yeah, everything, your level of determination, how determined you are, how brave you are, you know, how you tackle with obstacles. You know, how you tackle your obstacles, like, do you take the bull by the horns or not? You know, are you more direct? Are you more indirect? Usually malefics in the 3rd house in general are said to be a positive configuration, especially when it comes to willpower, especially if you have Mars in the 3rd house. Tends to show people that are very much go-getters, very brave, right? Whereas if you have like a benefic, like Venus or Moon, it might show, I mean, it can still show a person who has a great deal of willpower, but they're going to be more soft about it, more indirect, you know, not so much fond of confrontations and competitions. So that being said, I mean, the 3rd house really in many ways is an extension of the 1st house, according to the Vedic perspective in many ways. I haven't read this anywhere, this description, but this is how I see it. As an energy, it's kind of like the expression of your personality. And aside from this, it's also associated to the traditional things that it is associated with in tropical astrology, like communication skills, like oratory abilities, errands, neighbors, siblings, younger siblings especially. Let me think, travels, short-term travels, short-term or short-distance travels, all those things are still connected to the third house. But in addition to that, it's mainly the house of individual will, okay? How you go after what you want, how much of a go-getter you are, how you express, exactly like that. So how do you go after what you want? So and also, very quickly, the seventh house, well, it's mainly seen the same way as it is seen in tropical astrology, meaning that it is the house of partnership, especially the house of marriage. So the seventh house is actually the house of partnerships in general. So it's not just the marriage partner, it can be the business partner, any kind of partner. It's basically the other. It's the house of the other, the person who is seated right opposite from you. That's why it is opposite the first house, which is the house of the self. And so the seventh house mainly deals with one-on-one situations, diplomacy, negotiations, and of course, marriage and marriage-related situations. And when you have a contact between the third house and the seventh house, I have mainly seen this, I have to be honest, when it comes to the D1 chart or the natal chart. It's not like I wouldn't expect it to be similar in the Navamsa, but in the Navamsa, it would probably take on other meanings as well, because the Navamsa is not just about how you behave, it's also about how the spouse impacts you and, well, different types of people, not just your spouse, and how your life changes after a certain age. After midlife, actually, if you stay unmarried, or if you are married after the age of your first marriage. That's what the Navamsa technically shows. At least when it comes to, actual physical consequences in your life. I would say that Navamsa influences you throughout your life, but when it comes to actually seeing the effects of the Navamsa in your life, you're mainly going to see that past midlife, if you stay single, or if you get married past the age of marriage. So when you have a combination between these two houses, basically there is already an inherent conflict between the person's desire to go after what they want, meaning their independence, their self-sufficiency, which is shown by the third house, and the seventh house, which is their desire to have a partnership. And of course, this can translate into any area of life that has to deal with these two houses, any area of life signified by these two houses. So when I'm talking about partnership, this could also be a person who doesn't do well in business partnerships because they are very independent and they're very willful, and they basically tend to want to do things their own way. Now, of course, there will be variations based on every horoscope. I always mention this as a disclaimer. You have to look at the full situation of what is happening there. Divisional charts, all this stuff. What planets are sitting in these houses? What are the lords of these houses? Even if, obviously, there's a difference between, let's say, Saturn ruling the third house and Mars ruling the third house, right? So all these different nuances have to be taken into account. But looking at the general description, so having combinations between the third and the seventh tends to bring people who either have trouble maintaining relationships because, again, they're having a hard time balancing their needs against the partner's needs, or they will not even get into relationships, depending on, again, what other nuances are happening surrounding these placements. And just to be clear, the combinations that I'm talking about, the potential combinations, could be something like the Lord of the third house conjunct the Lord of the seventh house, or the Lord of the third house in the seventh house, the Lord of the seventh house in the third house, stuff like that. To a lesser extent, it can also be a single-sided aspect. So like, let's say, I don't know, like, let's say a single-sided aspect. I'm talking about the special Vedic aspects of planets. So, for instance, the fact that Saturn aspects the third placement from itself, but not the other way around. So, like, that planet is not going to aspect back. Well, it depends, unless it also casts a special aspect. But that's what I'm talking about. In Vedic astrology, special aspects mean that, there are these special kind of aspects that exist for different planets. They don't even exist for all planets. So, for instance, Sun, Moon, Venus, Mercury can only cast the conjunction and the opposition, according to traditional Vedic astrology. But yeah, I digress about this. But basically, yes, to a lesser extent, even if there is a one-sided aspect, you might see some themes connected to this issue of this person struggling to balance their relationship needs or their needs for a partnership and a relationship with their needs for independence and basically going after what they want. Some theories that I have come across, different articles and, other astrologers that I've heard have said things like there is a difference between when, let's say, the third house ruler sits in the seventh house versus the seventh house ruler sitting in the third house. Namely, in the first situation, supposedly it's the person submits their will to the partner, whereas in the second scenario, the partner the native expects the partner to submit to them. So if you have seventh house lord in the third house, technically it would mean that you're basically domineering in a relationship. But as far as I have seen, I have not found this to be particularly true. I've actually seen cases where the person has third house ruler in the seventh house, and this makes them extremely willful and extremely independent, to the point where they have a hard time even getting along with other people, much less a romantic partner. And of course, you also have to take into account, again, gender differences. It's probably considerably worse for a woman than it is for a man, because, again, socially speaking, women are educated to compromise a lot more in relationships, whereas men are educated that they have to get their own way no matter what. So if you're a woman who has these placements, probably you're going to have a harder time in relationships than the other way around, or you're just going to stay away from relationships. That's another option. But yeah, this is definitely something that I wanted to say. But also, in light of this discussion, I think it's also worth mentioning that in general, people who have a strong third house, irrespective of whether the third house is somehow connected to the seventh house in their horoscope. So let's say a person has a lot of planets in the third house, especially the most prominent planets of their horoscope. So let's say you have the Lagna Lord or the Ascendant Lord in the third house. Obviously, the third house is going to be very significant for you in defining your overall personality. So yeah, also by the same extent, by the same token, if you have Lagna Lord conjunct the Lord of the third house, it's also going to make you very willful, very strong, very opinionated, very much wanting to have your own way and having a hard time compromising. Okay, so, and also if on top of this, if the third house is very strongly placed, and on top of this, you have a contact between the third house or the third house Lord and your seventh house, obviously this theme of having a hard time, compromising and relating to others in one-on-one situations is going to be even more emphasized. So pretty much, to be perfectly honest, I have not seen many cases, I haven't honestly looked for famous people examples where, obviously you can tell that this is something that would require more extensive research because it has to do with detailed configurations in a horoscope. However, I can think of some examples that I've seen over time where people have strong third house placements, either in the D1 or the D9, or sometimes in both. And these people tend to have, actually, even one famous example that is the one that I covered recently, for instance, Elizabeth Taylor. If I remember correctly, she had a strong planet, I think Saturn, in the third house of the Navamsa. And granted, in her situation, again, she also had multiple configurations that pointed to problems in relationships, inability to maintain relationships, So it was probably not the only reason why she struggled in relationships, but it definitely added to the overall energy of making her a very strong, willful individual. And especially when you have it in the Navamsa, bear in mind that this is the marriage relationship, so it shows how you relate to your marriage partner. So in some ways, of course, always taking into account what planet is sitting there as well. Because again, if you were to have like Venus in the third house, Venus could be more diplomatic about dealing with the spouse, since Venus is also the Karaka of the Navamsa. So Venus is all about diplomacy and sugar spice and everything nice. So it's much better at smoothing things over, being soft and sweet and all that. But if you have a malefic in the third house of the Navamsa, it's more likely to cause problems in the marriage because the person is going to be willful and stubborn. So, and basically unyielding, right? So they're not going to want to back down and compromise and any of that. And I definitely have seen this. Elizabeth Taylor is just a more recent example that I can think of right off the top of my head. But I have seen this multiple times, actually. Once I started to realize that this was a thing, I looked at charts of people that I knew, again, charts of people that I analyzed, and I realized that a lot of the people that I know are, either had a hard time maintaining relationships, or they're the ones who are basically wearing the pants in their relationships, even when this is a woman. They tend to have a very strong third house. And oftentimes I have seen also contacts between the third and the seventh house connections, based on all of the criteria that I have described previously. So yes, this is something that I wanted to share. And again, you might think, okay, so what am I supposed to do about this? First of all, I always mention this, the main thing you can take from any of these videos is to become aware, because the first step to solving a problem is awareness. And then when it comes to relationships, communication. Ironically, also, of course, the third house is the house of communication. So I would say, actually, in these cases, if you have context between the third and the seventh, communication becomes extremely important in the relationship, and mutual understanding as well. So it's not just about talking for the sake of talking. It's actually understanding each other, and putting yourself in the other person's shoes and trying to work things out. But it has to be like a mutual effort, right? That's probably the hard part for people who have contacts between the third and the seventh house. So, but yes, it's something that definitely helps you to stay aware of this and helps you to understand. Also, I have seen it in the charts of people who, are celibate or have stayed celibate for long periods of time, and the kind of people who just seem to not really particularly need a relationship. They just seem content to be on their own, which makes sense, which makes a lot more sense now that I really have taken this little detail into account, because it could simply feel like for these people, actually relationship, that's another way to interpret it. It could literally feel for these people that marriage or romantic partnerships, especially long-term, serious, committed romantic partnerships, are basically obstacles in their path. And it also makes sense when you go back to the signification of these houses. The third house literally is about how you deal with obstacles. How well you can assert yourself, how you assert yourself. So people who have like a conjunction, let's say between the seventh lord and the third lord, can get to the point where they mistake the relationship for an obstacle, or they see like the relationship itself as a cannonball tied to their foot, basically. When they're trying to go after what they want, the partner just feels like, they're dragging them behind. But it could also be, in a lot of these cases, intuitively speaking, it could just be boiling down to bad communication in the relationship. The person not being clear about what it is they expect from the partner, and vice versa. Okay, so this is pretty much what I wanted to share, and I hope you have found it useful. And if you have, once again, do not forget to subscribe. And please, I emphasize this, please subscribe to my channel, because I have been checking the analytics lately, and roughly like 1/3 of the people who regularly watch my videos are actually subscribed to my channel. So please subscribe. It is free. It's, you know, and it's the easiest way to support my channel. And also please hit the notifications bell if you want to also see when I'm going to post a new video, and also when I do community tab updates with respect to future videos and other things. And also please comment in the comment section. I'm really curious to hear, you know, what you think about this topic, any examples you can think of, maybe counter examples you can think of course. And also, if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a wide variety of topics. Please check out the video description. I will leave my contact information there. Thank you.